when the term little magazine emerged as a Bengali term in the early 1960s, it represented little magazines published by groups of young writers who wanted to step beyond the more establishment oriented lines, which were widely published in the big magazines, in the daily newspapers, in literary supplements, all over. So it was a distinctively different voice that the little magazines represented in literary terms. But given the general cultural atmosphere of Bengal, where everything, every idea turns political, turns into a social movement, into a certain kind of activism, sometimes militant, sometimes not so militant, more experimental, but quite aggressive. In these circumstances, naturally, the little magazine soon came to reflect and represent different political directions and social activism. So there were little magazines that entered into the whole conflicting ideological debates within the left, a little magazine taking one position, another taking another position, often contradicting, combating each other in the process. Side by side, there were also other movements emerging, movements in the direction of new scientific thinking, the dissemination of scientific knowledge and information as a resistance to a fresh surge of obscurantism, religious superstitions, religious divisiveness. So a whole bunch of little magazines which were strongly directed to the popularization of fresh scientific ideas and scientific attitudes. This was also the period when the old Bengali commercial professional theatre had virtually collapsed and a new modern Indian theatre was emerging, with the emergence of several new directors with their own theatre groups. And almost all the major groups came to have their own little magazines. Shambhu Mitra editing one, Utpal Datta editing one, Ajitish Banerjee supporting and sponsoring one, even Ritik Ghotuk taking responsibility of a theatre journal, which he edited for quite a long time. The Film Society movement was discovering possibilities of fresh developments in Bengali cinema, away from the stranglehold of the Tollygunge film industry and the film culture. They needed their little magazines. So several film societies, or in some cases even small groups of enthusiasts over the new film culture, they came out with their little magazines. And there was consistently debates even between the little magazines. They were taking positions on different kinds of filmmaking, on different kinds of theatre making, and the clashes and contradictions between them. So the world of little magazines was a world of debate, controversies, discoveries, recognitions of new trends, supporting a culture. And there were takers those who would like even to enjoy the different positions, the different clashes of ideas. So the same buyer would be buying little magazines representing different, contradictory, opposing trends, even. And the debates would continue in the coffee houses, in other meetings, in the traditional addas. So they became points of reference for a larger discourse. And as some of these movements, they were lost, or they collapsed, or the people who were centering on these moved out into other disciplines, other interests, other areas of thinking, the little magazines closed down. They didn't have a voice to carry. But the ideas that they had generated, the ideas that they had pushed, they continued to have a historic relevance. And that we are recognizing right now, when I notice in the last 10 years particularly, several of these little magazines, which have long closed down, are coming to be anthologized. There are young research scholars who are doing projects on a particular little magazine or the other, because they come to give you a whole story of ideas coalescing and developing in different directions.